You know, a few weeks ago here on this program, I said something that was a bit controversial. I looked at the way Donald Trump was being treated compared to the Bidens and said it was proof that America was rapidly turning into a banana republic. And guess what? Everything I have seen this past week with the absolutely ridiculous, offensive, unbelievable plea deal entered into by Hunter Biden only serves to strengthen this view. I'll get to the charges and why they are so ridiculous in a moment. But first, let me say this. It is now abundantly clear that the Biden family and their Democrat cronies are now a species protected by the Justice Department, the IRS, the alphabet agencies, and of course, the once free, skeptical, and questioning American media. I want to bring you some breaking news out of Washington, where Republican legislators, led by Missouri Congressman Jason Smith, held a press conference Thursday to reveal that not one, but two whistleblowers have come forward. They've claimed that there was massive Justice Department interference into the investigation into Hunter Biden's tax crimes, and that in the course of their work, they discovered direct evidence that Hunter solicited bribes on behalf of his dad, the president. Apparently, there was a lot of money involved, too.
Mr. Biden personally received $8.3 million. Whistleblowers detail foreign payments to Mr. Biden, including $664,000 from the Chinese company State Energy HK, a large diamond worth $80,000, and a Porsche worth $142,000.
Oh, but wait, there's more.
Whistleblowers say reoccurring unjustified delays pervaded the investigation, including authenticating a WhatsApp message in which Hunter Biden demands payment from Chinese officials, noting that his father is in the room. The whistleblowers revealed IRS investigators were told by U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf that because the evidence would be found in the guest house of former Vice President Biden, quote, there is no way, close quotes, a search warrant for evidence would ever get approved.
And that WhatsApp message was pretty damning, too. It revealed that Hunter was writing to one of his business partners, Chinese Communist Party official Henry Zhao, who, quote unquote, invested in Hunter's firm BHR Partners, demanding money. Now, I'm going to quote this in full here because it's important. Hunter wrote, quote, I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. Tell the director that I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand, and now means tonight. And Z, if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. This is incredible stuff. I mean, it's like the dialogue out of a mafia movie. Swap out China for Russia, and it's exactly what everyone claimed was true about Trump. Namely, that his family had been compromised and was on the take from foreign hostile powers. And this, frankly, is why I'm not optimistic. Do you think the press, which is co-opted by the Biden family into believing their big lie, is going to go all Watergate on this? An in-Justice Department that slow-walked any charges at all on Hunter is not about to turn around and go all Elliot Ness either. But let's be really clear here. Whistleblowers say the IRS recommended felony tax charges against Hunter, but they were overruled by the Department of Injustice. And note that it took 5 years, to bring even these limited charges over a couple of tax claims and a gun possession charge. Charges that could have been dealt with in a matter of weeks if they involved an ordinary taxpayer, and quite probably with a stiffer penalty if they involved an ordinary citizen as well. The Justice Department and everybody else involved clearly gave Hunter special treatment. This is the sort of thing that happens in third world countries, you know, where the party in power keeps trying to throw its opponents in jail in the belief that if they bring enough muscle and control enough of what people think, they can stay in power forever. Sound familiar? I mean, we know for a fact, it was right there on his laptop, that Hunter committed multiple, countless violations around crack smoking and sale and possession. The sort of activity that his dad once voted to lock people up for and throw away the key. Then there are the interstate trafficking violations, the federal level prostitution law violations that he almost surely is guilty of. There's the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which Hunter also clearly violated when he failed to register his work for overseas governments. Some guys got 5 years for that not too long ago, by the way, but not our Hunter. And then, of course, there's the big kahuna, or should I say, the big guy. All the funny business and money transfers and everything else that went along with a former crackhead turned lobbyist's blinding success. Now, the evidence is credible that Hunter was engaged in some pretty serious influence peddling on behalf of countries like China and Ukraine. That is the only conceivable reason why Hunter was working for Burisma as an oil and gas consultant, despite having no experience in the business beyond filling up his dad's classic Corvette after taking it for a spin. Burisma, recall, found itself on the wrong side of the U.S. government after the government in Ukraine was overthrown in 2014 and needed a quick way to get back in the good books. This all reminds me of a funny story Joe Biden told back when he had most of his marbles.
So I got Ukraine, and I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Now, plenty of people claim that this is fake news and disinformation, just like the Hunter laptop. Now, I can't say one way or the other, but if nothing else, what a good reminder that Joe Biden could once speak in complete sentences. But remember, there is still the question of why Burisma was paying Hunter $1 million a year. And why was his salary cut as soon as his dad stopped being vice president? Well, here's a possibility.
President Biden met with at least 14 of Hunter's business associates while he was vice president.
Then Vice President Joe Biden had dinner with his son Hunter, along with Hunter's business associates from Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan. And the day after the dinner, a Burisma executive sent a note to Hunter, quoting, "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to D.C. and giving an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together."
Hunter's lucrative business dealings often included giving as much as 50% of his earnings to his dad.
Now, though, with these minor charges filed, Democrats and Joe Biden can say, hey, it's over. It's done. Nothing to see here. And get away with everything short of murder. All right, time for tonight's panel. Joining me is Sky News Washington correspondent Annalise Nielsen and Washington correspondent for the Australian newspaper, Adam Creighton. Annalise, Adam, thank you so much for joining us here on the U.S. Report tonight. Now, Annalise, Hunter Biden is scheduled to appear next month in the Delaware courthouse, where he is expected to plead guilty to 2 minor tax crimes and a gun charge, according to court documents. Annalise, what is the reaction in the United States to news of this plea deal? Do people think that this is just totally bogus, or do they just want to let Hunter skate on this?
Look, I think out in the greater America, in the greater population, people probably don't talk about this as much as you might think. In DC circles, it's certainly especially a pet cause for Republicans. But I think the other thing to remember with all this is we don't necessarily know that the judge is going to sign off on this plea deal. It is quite extraordinary for a judge to ignore some kind of agreement like that, but it's not impossible. And given the circumstances and what's been agreed to, there is every chance that they could intervene and put their own spin on this, say, no, these aren't serious enough penalties if you're agreeing to plead guilty. And especially with the gun diversion charge, that's getting a lot of attention. That's a particular charge where there is issues around equality. That's not generally what the general public would be slapped with if they committed the same offence of lying on a federal form, on continuing to use that firearm and disposing of it in the way that was disposed of behind a supermarket in a dumpster. If it's not a major issue, I would say this is at least going to be a huge one that they hit during the 2024 presidential election.
And I recall that the Secret Service at one point intervened in that gun case and actually tried to recover the gun after Hunter disposed of it so that it would not be a big issue. But Adam, doesn't this play right into the Republicans' hands to say there is one law for the Bidens and one law for everybody else?
Yes, look, I think it certainly does. I think the question of the particular charges themselves, I agree with Annalise, will kind of wash over most Americans, but it seems that the evidence more broadly is building up that there was some sort of corruption which actually involved Joe Biden in relation to foreign governments many years ago when he was vice president, or maybe when he was after vice president. And it's increasingly damning. The whistleblowers that the evidence that just came out today was extraordinarily damning. And, we're yet to digest the whole entirety of it. I think it's only been out for a few hours, I understand. But if even half of it's true, I mean, it suggests massive corruption through the IRS and the Department of Justice in favour of the Biden family, which is very worrying.
Now, Annalise, actually, I want to come back to you on that point there that Adam just raised about how big and damning these charges are. You said that in Middle America, people aren't talking about it very much. How much of this has to do with the Washington press corps not being aggressive enough about this? Are they pursuing this in the same way that they would if it was, say, charges about a Trump? Or has the press been sort of co-opted into the Biden narrative by putting out all of the fact checks and everything else on their behalf almost to say that there's nothing to see here?
I think there is just kind of this sentiment where they want to put it to one side and say, oh, but drug abuse, everyone's had a drug addict in their family. And I think there's some truth to that. But at the same time, we're not just talking about your run-of-the-mill family member who's got a drug problem. We're talking about huge amounts of money going through a very influential family. And I get asked this all the time by people, oh, is there any truth? Is the Hunter Biden laptop thing a real story? Or is it just a kind of made-up Republican thing? And every time I say, look, even if you don't believe what is being put in front of you, answer the question, what do you think Hunter Biden was actually being paid for? If it wasn't for anything nefarious that the evidence seems to show, what was his special skill? What exactly was the expertise there that he's getting $1.5 million a year? I think there's a huge gap to answer that question and then still feel confident about the whole situation.
Absolutely. Now let's go over to the other side of the aisle where a push by House Republicans to impeach President Biden has actually turned into a headache for House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Annalise, tell us what's going on here. This resolution has now been referred to committee. There are hardline Republicans who want to keep this going, but it doesn't sound like there's a huge amount of enthusiasm on the part of the Speaker, Annalise.
No, the answer is the House is in session and the House is a bit nuts sometimes. That's the whole point of it. I think it's the best representation of the broad diaspora of Americans, and what they're arguing about is who gets to impeach Joe Biden. And sure, there's been fights. There were some pretty harsh words between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert because there's certain factions in the House that want to own it, but you have to follow it through. And that's going to be the tough thing. It is a big deal to impeach a president, even if it's only ever going to pass through the House of Representatives. They don't have the numbers in the Senate to make that happen. And so it's not going to have any huge consequence beyond the headlines that go across America. But it's still one that each congressperson wants to own, especially going into 2024. They can say to their supporters, hey, I impeached the president. but you need something to prosecute him on. And I think that's where Kevin McCarthy's saying, oh, let's hold on and just get a bit of a better case together before we do this.
Yeah, well, one of the things, Adam, that I've been sort of wondering about watching, the impeachments against Donald Trump and now this against Joe Biden, is this sort of the Washington system descending into kind of a Westminster system like here we have in Australia where, there's censure motions and no confidence votes and sort of parliamentary procedural things. And the whole idea of an impeachment now becomes almost more of a symbolic parliamentary procedure rather than a serious attempt to unseat a president.
Yeah, sadly, I think that's right. I mean, it used to be a very serious charge, very serious measure, which was rarely used. Of course, it was never actually used in relation to Nixon. I understand it was just a mere threat of it. But it seems now every president basically gets impeached. That's at least the trend that we're seeing. And I mean, personally, I hope that Republicans don't impeach and they try to, to restore some meaning back to this process, rather than just simply use it as a political bludgeon. Kind of every few years to attack the president of the opposite party. I mean they shouldn't have impeached Clinton, in my view, and they shouldn't have impeached Trump, and they certainly shouldn't impeach Biden. I mean, if you're doing a bad job as president, according to one party, that does not justify impeachment whatsoever. It should be for extremely serious crimes, and basically only used when a very large part of the party of the president also agrees. I mean, that's the real test, I think, for impeachment.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that surely when the founders set up the American system, they kind of wanted to avoid a lot of that sort of parliamentary bricksmanship.